The inspector in the cab displayed remarkable patience, as it took a considerable amount of time for me to rejoin him. His expression darkened when I presented the empty box to him. He lamented the loss of the reward, saying that without the treasure there would be no pay, and he noted that the night's efforts would have earned both him and Sam Brown a decent sum had the treasure been present. I reminded him that Mr. Thaddeus Sholto was wealthy and would surely ensure they were compensated, regardless of the treasure's absence. Nevertheless, the inspector shook his head, reiterating his belief that it was a grim situation, and that Mr. Athelney Jones would likely share that sentiment. His prediction proved accurate, as the detective appeared quite blank when I reached Baker Street to show him the empty box. Holmes, along with the prisoner, had just arrived, having altered their plans to report at a station along the way. Holmes lounged in his chair with his usual indifferent demeanor, while Small sat stoically across from him, with his wooden leg propped over his sound one. As I displayed the empty box, Athelney Jones leaned back in his chair and burst into laughter. He angrily blamed Small for the situation, to which Small responded with pride, declaring that he had hidden the treasure where no one could find it. He insisted it belonged to him, stating that if he could not enjoy it, he would ensure that no one else could either. He asserted that only he and 3 prisoners in the Andaman convict barracks had any right to it, and he had acted for them as much as for himself. Small explained that it had always been the sign of 4 for them. He expressed that he would rather toss the treasure into the Thames than allow it to fall into the hands of Sholto or Morstan's relatives. When he realized our launch was closing in, he had stashed the loot in a secure location, stating there would be no rupees for us on this trip. Athelney Jones countered with skepticism, suggesting that if Small truly intended to throw the treasure away, it would have been simpler to dispose of the entire box. Small replied with a shrewd glance that while it may have been easier for him to throw it, it would have been easier for Jones to retrieve it. He noted that with the treasure scattered across 5 miles, it would now be a more challenging task. He admitted feeling regret over his actions, expressing that he had endured both highs and lows in life, and had learned not to lament over lost opportunities. Jones emphasized the seriousness of the matter, indicating that if Small had aided justice rather than obstructing it, he would have had a better chance at trial. Small responded with disdain, questioning the notion of justice when the treasure rightfully belonged to them. He detailed his suffering over 20 years in the fever-ridden swamp, working tirelessly while being chained in filthy convict huts, tormented by mosquitoes, and bullied by local police. He expressed his resentment at the idea of surrendering the treasure after paying such a heavy price, stating he would prefer to face execution than live in a cell knowing another enjoyed the riches that should belong to him. His stoic facade slipped as he displayed his fury, and I understood the genuine terror that had gripped Major Sholto upon learning that the injured convict was on his trail. Holmes interjected, reminding Small that they were unfamiliar with his story and could not ascertain how far justice might have been on his side. Small acknowledged Holmes' fairness, despite attributing his current predicament to him. He agreed to share his tale, asserting that every word he spoke was the truth. He requested a drink and prepared to recount his life story. He began with his origins in Worcestershire, near Pershore, where he noted that many Smalls still resided. He recounted how, at 18, he had left home after getting into trouble over a girl and had enlisted in the 3rd Buffs, which was heading to India. However, his military career was cut short when he lost his leg to a crocodile while swimming in the Ganges, leading to a 5-month hospital stay and ultimately being invalided out of the army. Despite his initial misfortunes, Small found work as an overseer for an indigo planter named Abel White. His life took a dire turn when the Indian Mutiny erupted, transforming the peaceful landscape into chaos. He described the horrors he witnessed during the uprising, including the burning of bungalows and the slaughter of his employer's wife. Small fled to Agra, where he found himself caught in the midst of the rebellion. He detailed his assignment to guard a small door in the old fort at Agra during the turmoil, where he was approached by two Sikhs, Abdullah Khan and Muhammad Singh. They demanded his loyalty, presenting him with a choice: join them in a plan to seize treasure or face death. Upon agreeing to their scheme, he learned of a Raja in the northern provinces who had hidden his wealth, which had been entrusted to a merchant named Ahmed. As he awaited the arrival of Ahmed, the tension mounted. When the merchant finally arrived, Small felt an internal conflict, but the allure of the treasure hardened his resolve. He ultimately aided in the treachery, leading to Ahmed's murder, and soon thereafter they discovered the hidden treasure of jewels. Small explained how they had buried the jewels carefully, making plans to retrieve them once the situation stabilized. However, following the mutiny's resolution, they were arrested for the murder of Ahmed, leading to their trial. Although the treasure remained undiscovered during the trial, Small and his companions were found guilty, with the Sikhs receiving life sentences and Small facing execution, which was later commuted. He recounted his subsequent years in prison on the Andaman Islands, where he plotted his escape. During his time, he befriended a native named Tonga, who aided him in escaping from the island many years later. Their journey took them through numerous adventures until they finally returned to England, where Small sought revenge against Major Sholto, who had betrayed him and stolen the treasure. He described his efforts to track down Sholto, culminating in a confrontation that revealed the whereabouts of the stolen jewels. After achieving his goal, he returned to share his story with those present, emphasizing his innocence regarding Ahmed's death. As Small concluded, he requested a drink, and despite my horror at his actions, both Holmes and Jones listened intently. Athelney Jones then expressed his gratitude for the assistance provided, reminding Small that he would soon be taken away. As they prepared to leave, Jones made a cautious remark about Small's wooden leg, while I reflected on the dramatic events that had unfolded. I expressed concern that this might be the last investigation I could engage in, as Miss Morstan had accepted my proposal of marriage. Holmes groaned at the news, but acknowledged her merits, remarking on the emotional conflict that love presented against cold reason. Despite his reaction, I assured him that my judgment would endure. Holmes expressed fatigue, attributing it to the reaction following their investigation. I noted the contrast between his bursts of energy and moments of lethargy, prompting him to quote Goethe about the dual nature of human character. He then mentioned the discovery of a Confederate involved in the Norwood case, attributing the credit of the arrest to Jones. I pointed out the inequity of the situation, as Holmes had done the majority of the work, while I gained a fiancane and Jones received the credit. Holmes humorously remarked that he still had the cocaine bottle, reaching for it as our evening concluded.